Yeah.
getting prepped to go. There's a lot of things coming for esports in 2018. And, you know, these players are going to fight for the top spot and earn their points and kind of set themselves up for the next season. And it's a lot of things are going to change, right? This first place spot in the next season is not only going to be giving you the kind of the flair to demonstrate that you are the expansion's champion, but also a spot in the Contenders Cup. So
Right. I mean, if you win the upcoming regionals that are going to be happening, then you get slotted in. And of course, gaining points over the entire year is, again, we've talked about this, probably the best way to qualify because 4 slots get allocated to that.
So SKYSAMA is going to be feeling pretty happy as the MVP of the season.
Absolutely.
Oh, no.
Well, we see Daria here, so let's kind of go over this matchup real quick. So
Didn't ban it.
He didn't ban Daria, which is interesting. Apparently, he is not favoring playing against these Forest Craft decks that people are bringing today, but his Dragoncraft got banned out, so probably his most aggressive deck outside of his aggressive Forest Craft deck, and he's got to play against his Daria deck. But as we see, SKYSAMA does not have the hand you want to see with Daria, and honestly, we've been seeing that a lot lately.
Yeah. You know, Daria is one of those decks that kind of excels if you hit the kind of perfect scenario for cards in hand in the order in which they come.
Right.
But there are a lot of situations where you kind of have to fight for your victory just because it's not the optimal way that the cards land in your hand, right?
Absolutely. And we see a lot of things get teched into Daria these days because there is some flexibility with it. Some people like to run the Craig. Some people like to run Wind Blast instead. Some people like to run the one of Chain Lightning just for some extra burn damage at the end of the game. There's a lot of tech choices you can make in it, but all of it revolves around having to have this Daria engine that works for you. And sometimes it gets a little bit slowed down, like with SKYSAMA's hand.
Ooh. Always a hot topic. Sarah.
Yeah.
Pre-evolving as well.
You remember a couple weeks ago, maybe even a month and a couple weeks ago, I was like, where did all the Saris go? Why is she not included in Shadowcraft anymore? And people started to wise up again near the end of the season.
Where is Sarah? She just took a vacation, that's all.
She did, yeah. She was like, you know what? People have been using me too much. I need to take a break. I'm back now, though, to show myself for the final day.
Yeah. There's a few things to note here that are interesting to me about Daria. Some Daria lists have been not including the sword, the enchanted sword. And I think that's really interesting. It really does feel like that's one of the big ways that Daria can push through and end the game.
Absolutely.
If you don't just defeat your opponent by flooding the board.
Right.
Which I would say is not necessarily too surprising, right?
Right.
It's definitely a very strong move for Daria to flood the board and have that be the overwhelming kind of method of victory. But I also think it's not too surprising if the board does not close to
People are used to it now. I mean, it used to be, you know, Daria, there just weren't any ways to handle it. But realistically, that's not the case, right? There are ways to deal with it. You just have to build your deck in order to do that. And big stopgaps. Like this Saris pre-evolve, think about how much pressure that just alleviated from DFCLOVER, right? He's got this tool that can just gain him defense turn after turn. He can make positive board trades with it. He's set up for a board flood type event. And, of course, Shadowcraft has things like Lurching Corpse and Necro Assassin to kind of further that game plan.
DFCLOVER very clearly wants to preserve the healing on Saras. He could have gone for a big trade by throwing the Saras into the Ogler and then the Belenus into the 2-2, and then pinging the Clay Golem. But opts to leave that there and chooses to go for Lurching Corpse Demon Eater instead. Which, great.
I like this, but again, this combo that he's choosing to go to is before Daria has hit the table and possibly flooded the board, so there'll be one less option for him if that does happen.
Yeah, here comes Daria. Throwing away quite a lot of cards in hand, but luckily not too much spell boost able cards. Ooh, nice.
That was a pretty good redraw hand there. Got the Enchanted Sword, got the Blade Mage.
Wind Blast for removal, and I believe that Wind Blast, if he had the play points, can actually go through the Saras now.
Yep. But because of how DFCLOVER set up this mid-game, SKYSAMA's hand needed to redraw into something spectacular. And I don't want to say this hand is spectacular. It's good,
yes,
but it's not going to win him this game. He's going to need to draw something else to get him out of this bind he's in.
And the very dangerous thing about this is for SKYSAMA is that turn that DFCLOVER has bought for himself basically earned him free passage to Hawi, which is another big way to kind of dance around the aggression that SKYSAMA wants to put out. And as these games get longer and longer, Daria loses effectiveness by a large margin.
Large margin, yeah. The longer the game goes, like when you play a Daria on 9 for full play point, value, you're not getting as much as you would if you were going off on turn 4, turn 5, turn 6. And with the hand that he has, he doesn't really have any good use for any of the cards in his hand. He's just got simple plays that Shadow can easily walk right around.
Going to be very, very dangerous here for SKYSAMA. He really needs to figure out an answer, and he only has one Daria left. He had to throw away one of them.
Yes, he did.
So
now, interesting that DFCLOVER, he's the only player on the day that brought the Reanimate Shadow version instead of the actual just regular mid-range Shadow version. I think it's a really good call. I think it's honestly just a stronger deck now. It just has more Aisha, quote-unquotes, at the end of the game with Zeus's and things like that. A lot harder to break through their endgame than it would be otherwise.
Certainly feels more comfortable, especially, you know, we talked about how mid-Shadow feels like it's now just trying to end games with Aisha rather than whatever it was before, if it was Thane, if it was Ector, if it was Shadow Reaper, you know, whatever it was. And if you're ending with Aisha on turn 10, why not just go for the more consistent game
build around
having
that.
the Zeus, having the Reanimates to enable that. So I kind of like that, just in the pacing sense of things. Of course, that's discounting a lot of the benefits that each Shadow brings, but
it does, like, I mean, but you still get the same, like, mid-range, like, type of feel, like, in the early game with your Ceres and things like that. The Kawi is definitely different than an Ektar play, right? But it's supposed to be, right? It's supposed to get you to that turn 10.
Yeah.
And then it has just a much meatier endgame that it doesn't have to rely solely on Aisha to win the game.
Yeah. The big thing for me is with mid-Shadow, it feels like a lot of the early damage that you get is circumstance, right? We talked about Corpse Lord of Woe and Caster and how you want to replicate Catacomb effects, and the reason why you want to do that is because you need to land in situations where you can start swinging followers in face. It's hard to earn that, right? So you have to specifically tech your deck to do that. Whereas Reanimate Shadow's not as worried because you have so much in the late game that can push the numbers that you're not as concerned with trying to set up scenarios to allow your followers to swing. And I think that feels like a more consistent game plan.
Yep, and especially against a deck like Daria. So SKYSAMA hasn't dealt any damage to DFCLOVER just yet, right? And if we get to a point where DFCLOVER is just casting Zeus after Zeus after Zeus after, you know, and then Aisha, like, I don't really know how Daria is supposed to play around that.
Yeah. SKYSAMA as well, already spending more. He's already trying to chew through his Guardians. And that's before Zeus is a problem.
That's right, and he's already got 2 Reanimate spells in his hand. DFCLOVER is looking really good this game.
Throw the Kawi's in there. And he started to the snowball is coming, right? These Kawi's act as removal every time they're kind of taken off the table, and you only have 1 Wind Blast.
Yeah, and if that Wind Blast isn't saved for the Zeus or something like that, this brick wall is coming. Yep.
And if you use followers to try to clear the Kawi, well, it's always going to be at least an even trade, right?
And we didn't really make mention of it earlier, guys, but today is going to be a longer day. We're going to be watching 10 matches today as we cut down to top 4. So make sure you grab your snacks, grab your drinks, get in your comfy chair. That's right.
Yeah.
And saddle in because we have a lot of intense Shadowverse games to go through today.
What is your favorite snack to eat while watching some?
I personally like almonds. I'm an almond guy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So the brick wall coming immediately.
Oh.
And yeah.
Oh.
That's that. So DFCLOVER going up a quick 1 here with an endgame that I don't think SKYSAMA could have dealt with. Regardless, he did not get his early Daria turns like he wanted.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a reason why DFCLOVER chose to let it through.
You think Aisha's pretty good? What about 10 damage, Storm, Ward, Bane,
20 defense? Yeah. Ridiculous. All right, so now we get to see DFCLOVER's Aggro Forestcraft deck, the only one of the day. We get to see how this works against Daria as well. Of course, Leaf Man, another good option versus Runecraft. We've talked about that in previous formats with Liza and things like that. Always good.
I'll be interested to see if DFCLOVER's 2 decks can beat Daria back-to-back. Because that's the big question, right? I mean, Daria is obviously the talk of the town.
Yep.
Very, very dangerous, and it's been that way for quite a few weeks now. And DFCLOVER shows no fear, right? He's just standing up in the face of it. And I feel like this deck specifically is trying to hit that point where if you don't get the perfect Daria turns, you're just going to be run over.
Exactly right.
That's probably where DFCLOVER is living in.
Yep, and I like the aggressive mindset here, too. If everybody's playing slow decks, try to go under them. Why try to be the one that goes over the top? You know what I mean? Try to side skirt all of this crazy stuff people are trying to do from turn 6 and beyond, and just try to win by turn 6.
We'll see. I think this hand is much better for SKYSAMA than it was in the last game. He's got a bunch of low play point spells to play, already a Daria to boost. Got the Overlosing Company. It's enough to feel like you have a chunky board in the early game, but not too much that you feel like your Daria is just going to tank, right? I like it. He's got the Magic Owl, even though he's going first, so he's not going to evolve that as quick.
Here's an interesting include for DFCLOVER for me, too. So Sybil is a card that I've seen every once in a while in Forestcraft decks. Generally speaking, it's more in value decks than in aggro decks. But it could come into play here to side skirt some magic missile action on some fairies that he wants to put into play and things like that. So it could be really good.
Sybil, of course, not the water worm.
Not the water worm. Yeah. No, not this one.
Sybil, Cybele.
Would this be Cybele?
Cybele.
Cybele. Instead of Sybil.
Yeah, not very commonly seen.
Yeah.
But there are situations. I mean, every time we've seen cards buff defense on board, some ridiculous things come as a result, right?
That's right.
We talk about how good things like Spiderweb and Bethlehem 1/4 stat line is. Well, when you start seeing a bunch of cards kind of approaching that same feeling, it gets real complicated.
Oh, it promotes really good trading against Shadowcraft decks as well. When they're trying to ping all your followers with 1/1s and things like that, you can just make it bigger so your trades are always effective. That on top of Wood of Brambles, you know what I mean? Can probably dispel Doom.
I think the Fita also draws you, right? It's a guaranteed draw for Fita. Yep, there it is. Very nice. I like the card advantage baked into the deck. I really, really enjoy that.
Yep, I like that a lot. And next turn, he's got Leaf Man, freshly drawn.
Yeah.
Very nice aggressive start here.
Probably going to evolve the owl here. But what's it's interesting because this is a pretty good evolve from the sense of, oh, this speeds up the Daria game plan. But it also means that you really only remove one follower from the board here. That's probably going to be the Sybil, I would assume.
Maybe. Or maybe you have to get that Pizza off to make sure the card engine gets shut down and more damage. But yeah, if you leave that Sybil, we're going to call her Sybil.
Sybil.
Yeah, if you leave the Sybil on the field, it just makes the board entirely much more difficult to deal with.
Yeah. Okay, some questions. You have to evolve to swing past a ward. Do you set up an Imperia? Do you airbound?
Yeah, this is rough because Hyperia is a really good play here. Airbound Barrage is, of course, a solid play because that will allow the most damage this turn. This is a tough call, honestly. Because if you do Hyperia, what are you setting up, right? You can attack your Goblin into the ward, and then you can evolve Fita or the Fairy and go face for 5, and you put your opponent to 10, and you have approximately 7 sitting down, but then you don't have the extra 3 anywhere, right, if the board gets cleared. So I think the Hyperia play is a little bit too greedy. I like this Leaf play.
Nice.
Plus another card draw with it.
Yeah. So that was the downside of not removing the Fita. But of course, if the Sybil was there, it would continuously be that turn after turn after turn, and the whole board would get.
It won't be long now.
And I think DFCLOVER with his deck, I don't think he can afford to play board trade with Daria. I think this is all going to go face. He's got to count the damage, though. We're looking at 9, 12 damage. Okay, looks like he's hedging a little bit here.
Yep. Doesn't want to go for the full swing in, but does prep.
Was like, you know what, if he evolves and he has like 2 piercing runes or something like that, he could take me out, so good call.
Interesting. There's the last Daria. He already threw away one of them. So this is it. Has the cards in hand, so SKYSAMA has about 1 big swing left in him in this game if he does not just lose outright here.
Right.
Which, it's very dangerous, right? At this point, they can do the Felspur and then the Airbound Barrage and swing everything into face, so SKYSAMA has to look into a big board clear here.
Yeah, I think that's the... I think SKYSAMA's on the control plan now. He just has to use as much value out of his hand and board as he possibly can to mitigate all of this damage. Because realistically, once you get aggro Forestcraft to no followers in play, without Rhinoceroach in the format anymore, it's really hard to get that spike damage at the end of the game.
That's very true. Yeah, what else is there really for Forestcraft, right? Like,
Hyperia needs a turn to set up, you know what I mean? if you're trying to pump your board with Elf Song or something like that, you need a board to set it up. It's really hard to just come out of your hand and deal that last little bit of damage.
Yeah, and DFCLOVER doesn't have any kind of weird elephant thing. I don't think he has any kind of jump warden kind of thing.
I don't think so. It's interesting. I've never really thought of building a Forestcraft deck that uses Jungle Warden like Shadowcraft uses Ayesha, but I'm sure it's possible.
Yeah, it feels like, I mean, your opponent's at 10 right now, right? Like, there is something good about, like, oh, my aggro game plan worked, now I can fall back to playing defensively to finish things
Because
out.
realistically, the other Forestcraft deck, just the general White Wolf Forestcraft deck, doesn't really play like that. It does all of its damage at the end of the game. It doesn't really care about the chip in the mid-game. So, kind of like a medium between both of those strategies could work really well. Never tried it, though.
All right, and this is it. DFCLOVER really is hoping, right? Now you're just hoping that you get a bunch of fairies maybe to play the fairy driver in combo. But this is pretty much a simple board clear, and SKYSAMA, again, has that one extra burst from that Daria he has left in hand.
Interesting. So, but Hyperi is big. So if DFCLOVER, well, he needs to find more than one fairy.
He needs to find fairies, I feel like.
Yeah, he needs to find a fairy generator here. Absolutely.
Oh, where is Fairy Circle?
Oh my. Do I miss that card? Let me tell you. I think more than most cards, I missed that one a lot. Yeah.
Fairy Circle was the heart of pretty much every Forestcraft deck. All right, here comes the Daria turn. Oh!
Not bad.
Get some good stuff. Ogler, Blade Mage, Enchanted Sword, plus extra card draw, and a second Enchanted Sword. And that's going to be huge because remember, you're at low enough cost that you can just kind of play the Blade Mage and then both the Enchanted Swords on top if you want.
All right, here it is, DFCLOVER. That's not a fairy generator.
Is the game over? How much does he actually need to board trade here?
Well, the problem is if he board trades, he loses. He has to go face with this Hyperia. He probably needs to play some defense, though. So some combination of Airbound Barrage and an Evolve to take something out. Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
Now you have to play the Felspar and Evolve. Oh, you just gotta let it through.
That's it, then. That's
2,
it.
4, 9, 12, 14, plus 4, 18. Yeah.
I really like the way DFCLOVER set this turn up, though. He did the board lock plan. If you don't have any, you can't play another Blade Mage here. You can't return anything back to your hand. If you don't have very specifically Enchanted Swords, you're not going to take me out this turn. Unfortunately for him, SKYSAMA had 2 of them.
I really, if you still have lead on your Hyperia, right? If you had just Felspar and Evolved and traded, I mean, I guess, yeah, you have to consider whether the board lock was more valuable or, you know, you couldn't have known that double Enchanted Swords were waiting, but...
Right. That's a rough play. I mean, DFCLOVER's mindset about it wasn't wrong. You know what I mean? But had he evolved the Felspar and destroyed the Daria, 5 less damage that turn, there wasn't a Blade Mage in hand. You know what I mean? Like, maybe take into consideration how many Blade Mages versus Enchanted Swords you've seen. You haven't seen any Enchanted Swords, but you have seen a Blade Mage. Things like that. Plus, if he does have a Blade Mage, that's still less damage than the Daria would be dealing.
Yeah.
So maybe a little misstep, but I like the idea of what he was doing.
Yeah. All right.
Time for me to prove
Very
myself.
close for DFCLOVER.
Very close.
Now he has to play into this mid-shadow matchup. Ooh, what a Brambles and the Elf Song.
He's got some nice cards to do so, though.
Okay.
This is interesting to me. Do you keep Fita here?
I don't think so. It doesn't fit into the Brambles Elf Song game plan.
Oh, looks like he is.
I mean, it could, right? If you Brambles on 2, and then Fita, well, Fita will probably get removed. And then you double Fairy Elf Song. But I can see that.
Okay, lots of 2 drops in hand for DFCLOVER here. We see SKYSAMA with his nice little techie mid-shadow deck with his Attendant Knights and Casters. Basically, just keep the board filled as early and as often as possible. I really like the strategy.
Which might really help against this particular Forestcraft. Oh, yeah. You know, incidentally.
Like, when you're playing against somebody, and you're playing for $6,500, and they play a Caster on turn 4, you're just like, what? And then it beats you, and you're like, why? Yeah, exactly. Why? Why did this do this?
Oh, double Brambles.
This is not a bad setup for DFCLOVER here.
Brambles has been kind of the heart of Forestcraft token play. It, I think, in a big way, reintroduced that game plan to Forestcraft when it was kind of introduced.
I'm stuffed.
I mean, realistically, it just lets you play this different game plan early game. Before, you had to trade out your fairies and then remake more fairies, things like that. Now you can actually fill up your board, feel relatively safe against Shadowcraft because they don't have a lot of ways to kill followers. They have Zombie Party, right? And they have Soul Squasher randomly sometimes and things like that. But they're trying to build a board just as much as you are. Wood of Brambles kind of decimates that game plan.
Yeah.
What a relief.
Now double Zombie Party in hand. Okay, there they go.
That's as good as it gets.
Yep. All right. What is your Elf Song timing in your mind if you're DFC lover in this game?
Well, he's got to produce a bigger board than this. So I think he was probably planning on doing something right around this turn had his board not got cleared. But I think now he's got to reset back up. Unfortunately, did not bounce his Wood of Brambles back to hand with that Airbound Barrage. So I feel like missing out on some value, but he does have a second Wood of Brambles, so not that big of a deal. But I think next turn will be the trigger.
Yeah.
Turn.
It is interesting to think about it in that way, right? Losing this Brambles here basically loses you Fairy Generation, which in turn, not only does it affect how well you can control the board, but also affects your Fairy Driver effectiveness, right?
Right.
So,
honestly, the more Wood of Brambles you play in a game versus Mid Shadow, I mean, we've seen infinite Wood of Brambles versus Mid Shadow before, and it is very effective.
yeah, it makes swinging into Catacomb effects feel not nearly as bad.
Right. And swinging back is even harder, because if they want to trade with you, they have to lose pretty much every follower they have in order to do so.
There it is.
That's nothing to fear now.
Caster value.
Yep.
Fighting on.
He's back. Very good.
Ooh, okay. Another option presents itself.
Interesting. Now, I would assume if you Aperia down, you still have a very strong turn in terms of Brambles and then Elf Song.
This is interesting though, because he'd have to bounce something back to his hand that he doesn't really want to in order to get value out of the Elf Song this turn, especially if he wanted to use Fita.
I think there's a world where you can Aperia, maybe evolve something to go face or something like that. And on the next turn you have something like Brambles Fita Elf Song.
It's true. I mean, there's a few plays you can make here. So one is you play Fita, you attack with the Fairy, bounce it back with Airbound Barrage, and then you go Elf Song. Looks like he's prepping for... Oh, it's this way. Okay. All right.
Thank you
Not a bad play at all. So this basically gives him advantage on board, got him some more card draw, more Fairy Generation, and this does set up another Evolution Orb for an Hyperion later in the game when he's really far ahead right
I
now.
won't die.
Yeah.
again.
Goes for the board trade. And that also kind of pressures SKYSAMA into thinking about, okay, I need to use maybe my last Evolution Orb here, which is rough.
Always
very,
rough.
Very tough.
Yeah, when you're the first player and you have to use your second Evolve before your opponent uses their third, it happens a lot, but in the games where you can actually save that Evolution Orb, especially when you're playing a deck like Mid Shadow, because its followers are so small,
Yeah.
it just
You
feels
really
like that.
want that instant board access and the buffed up stats.
Sorry.
And I really like that Fita included. It makes it so that you have to destroy the follower with not the most attack, just so you stop their advantage.
Yeah, really don't want Forestcraft, because, I mean, you can land anything into Fairy Generation, drivers, so many things, just the perfect tools to end the game with.
And I think DFC Lover noticed the game plan of SKYSAMA only has a few cards left in his hand. If I actually play the control route this game, I'm probably going to be very far ahead because I have so many cards.
Yep.
So much more access to things to do here.
All right, trade to the Fairy.
Oh, sure! Become a skeleton!
Don't hurt me.
Got me feeling hungry!
And now it's just Fairies in hand. And rare Fairies are a more valuable resource than the other one drops just because of their potential damage.
This ends here.
Or some cards like Fairy Driver.
So last Evolution Orb spent here on DFC Lover's side, and he's hedging on the fact that, okay, you have no Evolution Orbs. I'm going to fill wide, so it's going to be very tough for you to clear and play off that scenario.
I think he's just thinking right now if he should even trade. The Wood of Brambles kind of makes the 3-1 not an issue anyway.
Yeah.
But he doesn't want to take the 3 damage, just in case. I feel like he's so far ahead right now. Being as safe as he possibly can is not a bad move.
Yep. There it is. Full board clear.
Yet again, not bouncing his Wood of Brambles. Very interesting choice in my mind.
Okay. So I think Aisha has some instant board clear, but it is tough to throw the Aisha in here. Almost anything you run into is going to trade.
Yeah, it has to trade with the 1/1 if anything first, and then into one of the bigger followers here. But yeah, you can't knock off both the big followers in one fell swoop here like Aisha likes to do.
Very, very difficult. Wood of Brambles continue to demonstrate just how powerful the card it is. It looks like the Aisha has to be the choice here.
Sword of Woe isn't doing anything. I'll tell you that much.
Now we know why it is so woeful.
Yeah.
Okay, I would assume go for the 4-2 here. All right.
And that's got to feel good. Every time you can force an Aisha out of your opponent's hand when they're playing Shadowcraft, you feel really good about the end game.
Yeah, instantly. And at this point, I feel like you just start swinging face and pressing the issue. DFCLOVER, for all the work that he's done, has not gotten a lot of face damage, but it might start paying off here.
Oh, yeah. I feel like he's put him into a place where SKYSAMA has to play from behind every single turn. And when you're playing an aggressive deck and you can make a mid-range deck feel like that against you, you're doing very well. You basically out mid-range to them.
Yeah. I love the options of Fita, Brambles, you know, and of course Elf Song and Airbound just continue to provide everything in this deck that DFCLOVER has presented has just been very synergistic. It's felt very good.
Ooh. Right when the Wood of Brambles goes away. Now he doesn't have that option anymore, which I don't really like. I think he should have saved one of them, but I think he's so far ahead right now he can just keep jamming board and win out.
Nice. I like it. I love that so much. Just continue to make sure that his Aperia can turn after turn protect itself and swing again.
And it could just be that I have no idea. Maybe Wood of Brambles just doesn't matter ananymore. And Aperia is
time
play.
where he's needed its value. All right, no shadows. At 16 health, there's very little that Shadowcraft can do within these next 2 turns to really affect things.
Matter of fact, I think that's just it.
I think it's it, yeah.
There's nothing
There's
to
no
do here.
option in hand.
And DFCLOVER is going to be the first person to move on.
It's interesting, man. A lot of these Shadowcraft decks are either not hitting into it or not including Andrew Alphas, which, I mean, this is the result, right? 2 cards in hand
and
at
or
turn 9.
Ceres. We talk about it so we see it in the Reanimate Shadow deck, but how many of the mid-range Shadowcraft decks are running it? Because I feel like, how do you counter Wood of Brambles, right? You have your own clash effects. How do you mitigate all this crazy stuff that's going on board these days? Ceres. It just comes into play and takes over the board. It does Wood of Brambles all on its own.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
DFCLOVER, the underdog in terms of points, and that's what I was talking about. The